What's going on, my friends? For today's watch review, we're taking a look at the ZRC Grand Fonds dive watch. This is a super unique and funky watch that I've had an absolute blast wearing. But over the course of the last few months, I have identified what I consider are some serious issues, not so much with the hardware, but with the wearing experience, and I want to share those with you. Before we get into the review, as always, let's do a quick wristwatch check. I'm rocking my Citizen Garrison, or Chandler, whichever name they decide to put on the website. Very cool watch. I want to say that this is almost the perfect everyday watch, so I can't wait to review this one and share my thoughts with you. But other than that, let's get right into it. For price, you can find a ZRC Grand Fonds for around $2,800 to $3,500. And the reason why there's such an expansive price gap is because the bracelet, the proprietary ZRC bracelet, is going to cost you about $720. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the case dimensions and weight. Looking at these numbers, one thing you're going to notice is that it seems really thick with almost a 15 millimeter case height, but that's not an accurate representation because it's really only 15 millimeters because of the crystal. And it actually does wear more like a 12 millimeter thick watch. And for the weight, it is going to be a little bit heavier because I have a bracelet on it. So with the bracelet, it's sitting at around 230 grams or 8.11 ounces. But if you have a strap, like a NATO type strap on it, then it's gonna be a lot lighter. Now going over some general info or functions and features. So for the movement, we're looking at a Solida 200 movement. If you go on the ZRC website, and this is something that frustrates me, is it tells you either an ETA 2824 or SW200. It doesn't specifically identify which movement they use. I am going to reasonably assume that it's a Solida 200 because this is not a Swatch watch. And in today's watch trend, the ETA movements are really only reserved for Swatch Group watches. This frustrates me a lot because I believe at this price range, the customer deserves exact details on what is inside their watch, and it's frankly just lazy to put ETA 2824 or SW200 without specifically identifying which one is inside their watch. Of course, this wouldn't bother me so much if they had annotated on the caseback, but they do not. So really you're just left to either opening up the watch, which not a lot of people are comfortable with, or just guessing. If you disagree with my frustrations, please let me know in the comments. I, of course, am just sharing my personal opinion. Moving on, for the hardware, we've got a stainless steel case. This is not your standard stainless steel. One thing that's very cool about this is it has a non-magnetic DLC coating, which is rated for the ISO 764 standard, which makes it an anti-magnetic watch. That's a feature that doesn't really apply to my day-to-day, but regardless, I still really like the fact that it has that. Now moving on to the top, we have a 60-click unidirectional bezel. That bezel has a ceramic scratch-proof bezel insert, and I know we all love that. And one thing that makes this bezel special is it has what ZRC calls an ECS. So if you can see that little slit right there, that is the ECS, or Easy Cleaning System. And what makes this so great is it allows you to basically flush out the bezel with fresh water after a saltwater dive. And then looking at the 6 o'clock position, this is where we have a screw down crown. Usually, people are familiar with a 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, but in this case we have a 6 o'clock crown, and just very cool. Moving on to the back, we've got a screw down case back, and then all of this is going to give you 300 meters of guaranteed water resistance, but it has been tested up to 800 meters, whatever that means. Now let's take a look at that lume shot. I believe the lume is beautifully done here. It looks fantastic. I don't think it's very practical for a dive watch, but regardless, if we're speaking purely aesthetics, it is beautiful. It does remind me of a night sky filled with stars. It is also long lasting, so it's going to glow very bright at the beginning of the night, and it will still be glowing when you wake up first thing in the morning. Now taking a look at the dial, So as you can see, we don't have a date complication, and I really like that. I'm starting to get more into the clean dial aesthetic, so the simpler the better. For the hands, we've got these very thick, chunky hands, but again, I like that. It's different, it's cool, and then the finishing on the hands is very cool. It's not like a mirror polish at all. It's a brushed polish, which I like. And then we have this lollipop style second hand, which again is just very cool. It looks just so beautifully retro here. It just looks like a watch that came straight from the 60s or 70s. And you know, there is a huge market for that. There are a lot of people that prefer this style, and I find myself to be one of those people. I also think that the indices are tastefully done, and nothing about this is controversial in my opinion. It just looks straightforward, classy, and a good design. Now, outside of the aesthetics, practicality, I think they failed here. There is no chapter ring with 60-minute markers, and as a Navy watch, as a dive watch, and as a precision tool watch, they really should have had 60-minute markers here, because it just frustrates me that when you're setting the time or you're tracking time, you sort of have to guess in between every 5 minutes. And you know, again, that's not a big deal for me as a desk diver, but as an actual diver, the difference between 5 minutes and 1 minute is the difference between life and death. So I just feel like they should have had that. Now, in ZRC's defense, they do have some models with 60-minute chapter rings, but that is the exception and not the rule. A majority of their watches do not have these 60-minute markers, and I just feel like personally that's a failure on their part. But again, you know, as a desk diver, is that going to affect me? No. But I know there are a lot of people that do actually dive, and they actually buy watches to dive, and you know, maybe this one is not the ideal tool for you. Now moving on to the bezel, I gotta tell you, they knocked it out of the park with the bezel. So number one, 60-click bezels to me are superior. They feel better, like more chunky. Each click is more substantial, and I absolutely love that. In this case, you've got all of that. You've got this deliberate action, but it's also buttery smooth. And the best way to describe it is just like a Tudor Black Bay. And if you watch my channel, you know that my standard for bezel action superiority is the Tudor Black Bay. And really, this is right up there. It's almost identical to that action. So if you own a Black Bay, then it's pretty much the same, just superior bezel action. And I don't know if you can hear that, but oh my goodness, it is beautiful. And everything lines up perfectly. You also have a coined edge here and very easy access to the gripping surface, so it's still very easy to operate. And so to that end, again, they really just knocked it out of the park. But my complaint with this one is also that it doesn't have minute markers here, and as a diving bezel, as a tool, they really should have implemented, you know, precise minute markers on the bezel insert. Now moving on to the crown. We do have a screw down crown, and there is a ZRC logo on there, so very cool. I always love it when a company puts their logo on the crown. It gives it a touch of its own character. But I am not a fan of how they executed this crown. So as you can see, there is this crown protection end link right here. And what this does is, according to ZRC, this is a safety feature. So basically, you can't wear the watch comfortably if the crown hasn't been fully screwed in. It forces you to screw down the crown before you can wear it. And I think that's cool. I think that's a beautiful feature, but they didn't do it right. And the reason why I say that is because when you unscrew the crown, so to a certain point, you can get a good grip on it like this and unscrew it. But after a certain point, about 70% of the way out, this gets in the way. So you have to move it down to clear the crown, and then you can unscrew it the rest of the way. And so what this means is while the crown is fully out, you can't grab it from both ends like this. So you can only really get one finger on the top, and then you sort of have to use the side of your finger to operate it. And you know, maybe this is just me being super nitpicky. Maybe I just have super fat sausage fingers and other people don't have a problem with this, but it's just less than ideal. You know, you don't get a solid grip on it ever. And screwing it back in is also kind of a pain in the ass. You know, it's not just this quick and easy thing to do. You have to kind of apply pressure with the side of your finger and then get a good enough grip with the top of your finger and then do this weird dance with it until it finally bites the threading and you can screw it back in. So, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are you really getting all these benefits from protecting this crown or making sure that it's screwed in with this system here? I don't know. I don't like it. I'm not a fan of it. For a military Navy watch, they should have made it like a very quick and easy thing to do. Whereas in this case, for $3,000, you're buying a watch that you have to cater to it and not vice versa, and I'm just not a fan of that. Now, with that being said, once you get comfortable with the watch and you wear it every day, you know, you learn the muscle memory to operate the crown effectively. But again, it's like you have to learn how to use the watch. And honestly, just at $3,000, you shouldn't have to cater to anything. Like, the watch should be good to go, easy to use from day one. And for all you ZRC diehard fans, again, this is just my opinion. I'm just sharing my experience. You know, if you absolutely love how the crown functions, let me know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. And I'll gladly take recommendations on how to not be such an idiot when operating this crown. Aside from that though, I mean, the hardware itself is fine. It looks good, it operates good when you're turning it to wind it and change the time, you know, everything. It's a Solita action, so if you're familiar with that on any other watch, it's nothing different here. Usually at this point of the review, I would talk about the bracelet, but I purchased the version that came with just a typical canvas strap because I'm cheap. You know, I don't have the strap with me. It's in the box. There's nothing special with it. It's your typical canvas strap. But I did install my own aftermarket 24mm beads of rice bracelet, and it fits just fine. And at least you can see that if you do buy this watch, you can install your own bracelet of choice. The only downside to that is the ZRC has proprietary screw heads for you to do a bracelet swap out. I was fortunate enough, my watch came with the proprietary screwdrivers, but not everybody has those. So you will have to buy them separately. And I mean, they're not super expensive, but they're also not cheap. So that's just something to consider if you are planning on swapping out the bracelet on your future ZRC purchase. And moving on to the caseback, screw down caseback. It's a closed caseback, so you can't see the movement in there, but I like it. It's simple, it's clean, and it's got that beautiful brushed finish that I absolutely love. No complaints here. And now talking about the finishing, mostly a brushed finish. I love it, just like with the caseback. It's beautiful and it pairs very well with the intended purpose of this watch. It's not too blingy, but it shines just enough to look really good on anything, whether you're in a rough and tough environment or a more social or formal environment. I think it's gonna look good anywhere. Now going over my overall thoughts, I know I shared some frustrations that I had with the watch, which were the crown execution, the lack of a chapter ring with precise 60-minute markers, and then the application of lume. I felt like it was more aesthetically pleasing, but not practically useful for an actual diver. And I acknowledge that these issues are not going to affect 99% of us desk divers, but I still think it's important to bring up if you are buying this watch for the express purpose of diving. Now, with that being said, everything else is fantastic. The execution of the finishing and how it's put together and the bezel action, and even just a little detail of that ECS system, you know, these are all fantastic features, and it is such a beautifully fun watch to wear. On top of that, on top of it being beautifully fun, it's also beautifully unique in such a tasteful way. Some watches are unique just to be unique, but this one, it's unique and it lives rent-free in your head. You look at it and you go, man, that was such a cool watch. And that's the reason why I bought it, because I saw it on Facebook and I could not stop thinking about it. And in this day and age where it's getting harder and harder to get something that truly is unique, this is one of those watches that I think helps you stand out in the never-ending list of watches that all look the same. Another thing that I really like about this watch is its historical past, its ties to the French Navy, the military in general. For me, that has a lot of value. Any watch that is tied to the Navy in any way is gonna be something that I value very highly. So this watch, the Tudor P01, the Marathon GSAR, even the Citizen, the NY0040, all those watches are super cool to me because of their ties to the past in the military, and this is no exception. So if that's something that you also value, then definitely go for this one. And that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the ZRC. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope I was able to show you a little bit more in-depth details because these watches aren't covered too much on YouTube or anywhere really. So I figured I'd change that, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to join any of my other social media groups. All of those websites are in the description below. You're all more than welcome to join my humble community. And other than that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on my next episode. Bye.